Hello, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petrie. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, make sure you subscribe to my channel right now. On this week's episode of 60 Minutes With, we are going inside the classroom. Yes, we are going inside the classroom and getting a teacher's perspective on the education that our kids are learning, what they're learning. Will it be beneficial for them whenever they get into the workforce? And here to educate us on, education, we have Jael Moody. So welcome to the podcast.
Hello.
I'm so excited for you to be on the podcast. First, where in the world are you, Jael Moody?
I am in Texas,
All
currently Port
right.
Arthur, Texas, but I'm representing Beaumont.
Okay. Big Money, Texas, as they call it. Big Money, Texas. I'm so excited to have you on here because you're my first teacher. You're my first teacher on the podcast, so no pressure. And I have all these questions about what is really going on in the classroom. So I'm so glad that you boldly agreed to be on the podcast to answer my questions.
Definitely.
So, okay, my first question is explain to me your experience in the classroom.
Okay, so just a little bit about my history. This current year makes my 14th year in education.
Okay.
I taught in the classroom for 10 years. So I taught pretty much K through 5. But I taught first grade first. I was in gen ed, then I was the ESL teacher for a one-way dual language classroom. I went back to being a gen ed teacher. Moved to a couple of districts, ended up being a math teacher for elementary as well. And then at the end of my teaching career, the year after I made district teacher of the year,
Yay!
I
Congratulations.
thank you. I became a dyslexia interventionist. And so I did that up until COVID. And 4 years ago, I received a promotion. So now I am the district testing coordinator. I'm also the 504 coordinator and newly assigned gifted and talented coordinator as well. So that is what I'm currently doing. And that's my experience that I, come with.
Okay, so you said a couple phrases and a couple words that I want to make sure that myself and my audience understand. So you said gen ed. So what is
Um,
that?
yeah, so gen ed is just short for general education. So it wouldn't be like a special education classroom or any type of, like I said, ESL earlier, which is English as a second language. That means it's not the ESL class. It's just your general classroom that, just your average student would be a part of, like no special programming.
Okay. And so we're in 2024. So you said this is your 14th year?
Yes.
14th year. Okay, excellent. Now, which subjects that are being taught right now will be useful in the future?
So I would say all subjects that are being taught right now would be useful in the future, not only just because we're preparing students to be functional in society, but I think that something that people don't know is that when the curriculum is decided upon by TEA and when it is written, um, there are other stakeholders that have input into it for a specific reason. So, the agency will reach out to industry in those different businesses or career fields and ask them, okay, what does a graduating student or a recent graduate need to know before they get into the workforce? And so they gather those skills, and then they pretty much structure them by grade level to almost scaffold them into, by the time you're an adult, you have these skills to enter the workforce. So I would say all of them, because I believe, and I have an unpopular opinion about it, but I believe that the agency is strategic on how they structure that and why they incorporate those specific subjects and skills into the curriculum.
Okay, so two follow-up questions on that. Number one, what does TEA mean?
Oh,
And number
I'm so,
two,
I'm
that's
so used
okay.
to being in my field. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's why I'm here. That's why I'm here. So, what does TEA mean? Number one. And
Uh,
number two, why do you think your opinion about TEA is unpopular?
okay, so TEA is the Texas Education Agency. So that's, they're the big dogs for the state. Like that's where we get our orders from. And I would say I think my opinion is unpopular because I'm sure we'll get into it later, but just with standardized testing and the what people call the new math, new ways that we teach, um, I think sometimes we don't look at the rationale behind that. And so my perspective is kind of coming from how did that come about? Why is it structured that way? And sometimes because it's hard to do, a lot of educators and even parents take it as an attack or as like, why are they like they're doing too much? But really my approach is kind of, I understand the rationale behind a lot of it. And so sometimes it may come off as though I'm more defensive of the agency. But it's just I feel like I kind of get it. And again, that's my personal opinion. But I think that's why it may be an unpopular opinion because of the stress that it may bring, and really that kind of comes with the whole mindset thing. So
Okay, okay. So, how do you, when you were in the classroom, did you give homework? And how do you feel about homework? Do you like it? Do you dislike it?
okay, so this is my take on homework. Again, unpopular opinion, right? And I think it goes back to what I just spoke about. I think it's looking at what the purpose of homework is, how it's supposed to be implemented. And if it's implemented in the way that it's supposed to be, it is very beneficial. However, I think sometimes it's not and it becomes overwhelming. And that's when it's like, why do kids have homework? They shouldn't have this. So back to answer your question. So yes, I did provide homework to my students. However, the purpose of homework is to reinforce what is already learned in the classroom, right? So my assigning homework is me assigning something that I know my students can do independently, and they're just practicing and reinforcing because, like they say, practice makes permanent. So that's just reinforcing what they're learning. They're getting that support at home. Obviously, the 20 minutes of reading a day I would assign so they can get that extra reading that's going to benefit them. However, if I'm a teacher and I am assigning homework on something that students have not learned or mastered in class, then yes, I am against that.
Yeah.
That is not beneficial. So, what tends to happen is instead of us looking at the purpose of homework to reinforce what's learned in the classroom, to just be practice, not graded, not a part of the report card. This is just they're at home, it's being reinforced, it's giving that homeschool connection. But what happens is I didn't finish the lesson today and I need these grades. So here, do this when you get home. Finish this when you get home. Or, they're so behind, or I didn't check for understanding. I just taught the lesson. So I don't know if they got it or not, but this was on my lesson plan to get for homework. So today you're going to do this for homework. So then the kids get home and what's supposed to just be a little 20-minute reinforcement has become hours and hours of frustration and crying and tears. And then another thing is the parents don't understand the content. So even if the student struggled a little bit or maybe forgot, the parent has no reference to assist. So one thing I would do when I was in the classroom, like I mentioned earlier, I had a lot of English language learners. And so it was a specific curriculum called Go Math. But what Go Math would do is they actually had the homework translated into Spanish. And so I had what was called Class Dojo, like a class news feed, almost like a Facebook, for lack of better words. And I would post a screenshot of the Spanish version of the homework to that parent page so that because the parents will say, well, I don't know English, like I don't speak it. I would love to sit with them and help, but I don't speak English. So I would give that to them and I would explain to the students, because the goal was for them to learn English. So I would explain to them, this is not for you to read and use as a translation tool. This is for your parents. So as you're working on the English page, your parent can read the Spanish page, and just in case they need to help you or remind you of something, they'll be able to have that in their native language. And so, to answer your question, I'm an advocate for homework. Or I won't say advocate, but I approve of homework if it is assigned as intended, as a reinforcement, and not just I need grades, or not just, oh, you didn't finish this, or test corrections. It's not going in the grade book. So as intended, yes, I am an advocate. It should not be any more than 20 minutes a night.
Okay, you know what? You are the perfect person, I feel, to be on the podcast because you have, like, you see it from both sides. You see
Right.
it from inside the classroom and you see it from outside the classroom, which is very unique. If there are teachers or administrators from different school districts, or maybe within your own school district, that would love to talk to you, to pick your brain, or maybe even have you come out, how can they reach out to you?
So the easiest way would probably be to just go to my website. It's my name. So they could go to jailmoody.com, and they can go to the contact page. It has where they could actually submit an inquiry on there. It has my email address, it has my social media pages. So if they go to jailmoody.com, go to that contacts page, they'll be able to contact me.
Perfect. Of course, you stated that you were in Texas earlier, and there's standardized testing, excuse me, in Texas. Do students really need that testing? It's like the $1 million question right about now.
So again, I guess we should call this segment
Unpopular.
unpopular opinion, right? I would say yes. And this is the reason why I'm an advocate for standardized testing. But again, kind of with the homework, if it is given in the way that it's intended, right? So I'll explain what I believe the agency is doing, and then I'll explain what happens and why it becomes a no, we don't want standardized testing, right? So, as I mentioned earlier, Texas Education Agency strategically asks businesses, or industry, what do students need to know to be a successful adult, right? Um, we get input, we create a curriculum that aligns with that. And the goal is, if that curriculum is taught with fidelity, then those students will be ready, right? But how would we know that districts are doing what they're supposed to do to teach what we're asking them to teach to prepare our students? And how will we gauge where students are and how we can adjust that curriculum if we have no data to support that? If we have no test scores, no standardized tests, how do we know what we have implemented is going to work, right? We have to give some type of assessment to show that they have mastered those skills that we say they need to know, or they are ready to go to that next level, right? And so I think it's important for that. And also just for districts to have the data on the students. How have they grown from third grade to fourth grade? What is their growth measure? What do we need? What subject did we, or what skill did we kind of drop the ball on this year? Maybe this teacher, her students were really strong in fractions, but were really low in multi-step problems. I'm not going to know that unless I have some type of standard test. And sometimes, if it's district created or even campus created or teacher created assessments, it can be biased. So my test in my class or district may be a little easier. So my kids are high performing. But then I go to another district and theirs aligns more to, what TEA wants us to do. So then it looks like my kids are doing worse, but really it's at the rigor that it should be. So we have to have something standard, that gives us valid data, right? But this is what happens. So the goal is, you follow this curriculum and you just teach. You don't worry about STAR. You just teach. And at the end, hey, we're going to give them a little test just to see if they got it. Like that. This is what STAR is in my head. Hey, we aligned this curriculum. We made this curriculum. We just want to check in to see how they did, if they got it, if they're meeting the expectations. Y'all take this test today, just like a regular weekly test. All right, moving on. we're going to go, So, but what happens is because it's accountability, it gets us.
Yes.
And then like now there's a letter grade. So if the kids don't do well, my district or my campus can get an F. Or now we have teacher incentive allotment where if their kids have
Yes.
a certain growth measure, I can make an extra 30,000 a year.
Yes.
So now it's that they have to do well. So with that, now it's I need to go look at the blueprint because if I know there's going to be 5 questions on multi-step, but only 1 question on financial literacy, forget financial literacy. I'm going to just go to multi-step questions the entire time. So now I'm teaching to the test because I'm scared I can lose my job or my school is going to think I'm a bad teacher or my district is going to get an F. So then I start teaching to the test because
Yes.
so I understand the TEA is really just what it says. It's accountability. It's just trying to make sure we're all doing what we're supposed to do, right? But the stigma and the mindset, and then on top of that with the teachers, then it causes principals to say, well, I know the curriculum supervisors wrote this curriculum and it aligns to the TEKS, but I'm going to do what's best for my campus. And these kids are low. So I think we should do Star Blitz. I think we should do this. We're going to keep them after school and we're going to just go over multi-step problems all day. So I think that's what happened. I think the intent was not that, but I think we struggle because we're in a place where we have to change that mindset of this is the curriculum and I'm just going to teach it with fidelity. And then at the end, they'll see if the kids got it and it should work. But what kind of happens is we never get to see if it works because we're so scared that we're not going to do well that we just try to intervene in our own way. And I hate to compare it to religion, but it just came to me. It kind of makes me feel like when it comes to God, like, he has the answer and he's written out the path for you. It's there for you. But then for some reason you just like, this looks bad, or no, I don't think that's gonna
You
go well.
still
So
nervous.
I'm gonna just do my own thing. I'm gonna do what I think works best because I just don't want my life to be in shambles. And not saying at all that TEA should be comparable to God, but that's what it made me think about,
Right.
um, how we act in our daily lives. And sometimes that can carry over to other areas in our lives, that anxiety and that, the pressure can get to us and cause us to do things that's not best for kids. So then we're no star is horrible, star is horrible. But no, it's our reaction to the implementation of star that is causing the stress on the kids. If we go into the classroom and just say, if we just teach, and then at the end of the year, we're like, okay, we're just going to check to see if you know this. Here you go. I'm sure that anxiety wouldn't be there, but it'll take a while to change that mindset and change that. But that's
A
my take on
long
standardized test.
while. A
Yeah,
long while.
that's my take on it.
So this is what I'm thinking. There has not always been STAR testing
Hmm.
or standardized testing. Sort of like what you said, the teachers would go in and teach. You'd have like your test at the end of that curriculum or the end of that chapter, some pop quizzes here and there. And, you got your A's and B's, you graduated, you didn't, then, you didn't graduate or you didn't move on to the next grade. So, was that teaching and that method of determining if the students are getting the curriculum, was that incorrect, or the way we're doing it now, is that incorrect? Because we still have these teachers, they're still teaching. Why is it that now we need a standardized test to determine if the students are getting the curriculum, but we did not need it before?
That's a good question. So I will say I was born in the 80s. So I
Okay.
was not around when we didn't have it because when I was in school, we took TOS. Like from what I can remember, I took the TAAS, I believe. And then by the time I was in high school, I took tax. And then when I started teaching, it went from tax to STAR. So I don't know. I don't have the data or the research behind how successful it was. I don't have the data on were those people in the workforce smarter or better? Do my parents have a better knowledge of, math than I do. I don't know because I don't have that data. But however, I do find that, and kind of I was a math teacher, so all my samples will probably be math. Some of the things that we learned, or the way that we learned it, was more on the lower level of, I would say, understanding or comprehension. So, for example, um, say we were adding two-digit numbers. We learned the algorithm of how to do it. Like, oh, you just line them up and then you add, and then you put the one at the top and then you do that.
Right.
But we weren't really taught. Well, I don't remember being taught why. Like, I do not remember being taught, why am I carrying the one? What does that mean? I don't remember learning that one is a group of tens. So a group of 10 that you move over. So 10 single items creates a group of 10, and you move on. And that's what we're doing now. So I think it seems challenging because our generation didn't learn it that way, but I do think a lot of what they're teaching now gives the comprehension piece. I'll put it that way. So now, instead of me memorizing, this is an algorithm, this is a formula, this is how I do it, and then we just get it and then we move on to the next grade, and then hopefully at our job we can either use a calculator or we just
Yes.
But now it's more like, oh, now I understand how that equation was created. Or mental math. Like, now I know why I round up at the store. Now I know why I can't, like, there's certain little skills, and I don't want to get too much into math because then I'm going to confuse everybody. But there's certain things that the old way for us, we feel like it was just fine. But then when we really sit down, there are a lot of things, like you'll hear an older person say, well, I'm not good at that math. I don't know what that is. Or I'm not good at it. It's not really that you're not good at it. It's that when you were younger, you weren't taught it in a way where you were supposed to understand it. You just knew the algorithm and the formulas and you just got it done. And so, yes, you passed because it was a lower level of rigor for you. So it seems like it's harder now, or it seems like it's different, but I think they were trying to help, just to make us think on a deeper level and understand what we were doing as opposed to just memorizing. I hope that answered the question.
It did. It did. Thank you. Thank you. You spoke about teacher anxiety and teacher nervousness when it comes to the standardized test. And teachers, and I know they're not doing it on purpose,
Mhm.
but they take their nervousness and their anxiety and put it onto the students.
Mhm.
Because as you so eloquently described it, teachers have all this pressure to, make sure my kids get this, make sure they understand this, make sure they get whatever grade on the STAR test or standardized test. And they push that nervousness and anxiety onto students. Now, I don't expect you to have the answer to this question, but I'm still going to ask because
Mhm.
you're the professional here.
Okay.
What can be done to, number one, keep teachers from being so anxious and so nervous about this test, and then them pushing that nervousness and anxiety onto kids? And now we have kids that are anxious and nervous and have
Mhm.
an anxiety around test taking, not just standardized tests, but any test at this point in 2024.
Mhm.
What can be done to stop that anxiousness from the teachers and stop the anxiousness that flows to the students when it comes to test taking?
Honestly, like you said, I don't know if I have the answer for that, but I know that it's going to have to be a shift in mindset.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that would be changing the name of the test. I don't know. I know one thing, like I mentioned earlier, that the agency really was trying to, and I keep saying the agency like I'm speaking on their behalf. I'm not speaking on their behalf. This is just my assumption. I don't work for the Texas Education Agency.
Yeah.
Disclaimer. This is my perception of what I think. I think, like I said, I think their goal is just, hey, here's a test at the end of the year. Just take it. We want to see. They've gone so much as to actually last year they implemented this. You know how it used to be a 4 and 5 hour time limit. Now it's like you just get all day. Like, as long as you need, you take the test, we move on, we move on. And I think part of that probably was because people were saying kids were getting text anxiety from having a timer and having to be time, having to finish in a certain time. Um, Even in the test administrator manual, they say, because the goal is really to be like, hey, this is a test, you're going to take it, go back to class, finish your instructional day. So they even put it in the manual. We encourage, after a couple of hours, if majority of your class is done, finish up and finish the rest of your school day like nothing ever happened. Like I think they're trying to encourage, and trying to help with that mindset of this should not be as big of a deal and as stressful as it has become. So we're going to try our best to make this as smooth, as less stressful as possible. So we're trying to communicate that you get as much time as you need. We just need to know, get as much accommodations as you need. Like there are so many accommodations that students are offered with the online test. So we're modifying the way that the test is provided to make it less stressful on students. We're altering the time constraints to make it less stressful to teachers and students. We're telling you, hey, give the test and then go about your instructional day like it's just any other day. But I don't know. I don't have the answer for when that will click and when that will change in teachers and even administrators. Part of it could be that accountability piece. Maybe we offer feedback in accountability, but do we have to say you're an A, a B, a C, or D? Maybe that is it. Maybe we need to revisit the way that we communicate accountability, and the ramifications or the consequences that come with the accountability. Maybe if that's communicated a little bit differently, it won't seem like a label placed, and it won't be that big of a stressor. Because if I feel like this can possibly take away from my home or my children's mouths, my standard of living, then yes, some people feel like they have to do what they have to do to make sure. So to answer your question, I believe it's definitely going to have to be a change in mindset. There's going to be some things that maybe the Texas Education Agency is going to have to relook at as it relates to accountability. But then there's also, some of us are just going to have to woosah, take a deep breath, and say, I taught the curriculum as it was
Yes.
written, so I know they're going to be fine. They have the accommodations they need, so they're going to be fine, and just let things be. And I don't know. I don't know how we can get there, but I think that would be part of the solution.
How does standardized testing help the student, and how does standardized testing help the district? Or does it? This is me assuming that
Yeah.
it does.
So I would kind of say part of what I was saying earlier. So as far as helping the district,
Mhm.
well, and it does help their rating. So when we have standardized testing, and one thing that people don't realize is it's not just did you pass or fail now. So there's like three domains of the accountability system. And again, I don't want to confuse viewers by going too much into it. But one is performance of, did you get approaches, meets, and masters, and you can get this many points for this many students. But then there's another one for growth. And so I don't think that everyone is aware of that growth measure can replace the performance measure. And so if we are if we are proving that we're growing students, um, that can help our district rating. So I would say that, of course, with the accountability, that helps. Also, it helps us, as I mentioned earlier, see where our students are and what they need to know. If we don't have that standardized test, we can't compare it to the state, the region. We can't compare it to, you know, Greengrass ISD or Hot Mess ISD. We can't compare
Yes.
it to know. How do we know where we are in relation to everyone else other than standardized testing? Because I can live in, whatever I want, a cloud nine ISD, and I can just make up that we're the best and make all my tests easy. And my kids probably, can't read, won't be successful adults, won't be prepared for the workplace, but no one's holding me accountable because I'm allowed to do whatever I want to do. I'm giving the test that I make. I'm giving what I think. So I think it's necessary to, again, hold us accountable, but then also let us see where we are and where we are in relation to other districts. Again, it helps us to see where the students are. So if I'm a fourth grade teacher, I can look back at Johnny's third grade star. I don't have to say the teacher goes to another district or say, I have that data to where I can look and say, okay, he really struggled with you know fractions. So I know when it's time for me to do equivalent fractions, I probably need to pull Johnny to the side and go over just the basics of fractions before we can get to this. But if I don't have that data to help me find, to help me make those decisions, then um, you know, it's not going to be helpful to the student. Also, with students with disabilities, a lot of our evaluation data, we use standardized testing for that. So if I have a student who has dyslexia, that star data comes into handy to know how are they doing comparable to the students in their campus, to the students in their class, to students in other districts. How were they in comparison? It also helps Texas Education Agency to see, like, okay, how are dyslexic students performing on these? How are the GT students, gifted and talented students, performing? How are our special education students performing? What do we need to do to intervene in special education? We won't know any of that if we don't have the standardized test. So I would say, for that evaluation, it's just another source of data that can be beneficial. And then again, it's letting us know, are they ready for the world? Are they ready for the world? And the only way we'll know is if we use tests that are, strategically structured and created for students to enter the workforce.
Okay, this is going to be my last question on standardized testing. I promise, Jael.
No,
And then
you're
we're going to move on. Then we're going to move on. The last, I might say, maybe 5 years, and you probably can give a better number than that. It has come up that these standardized tests are culturally biased.
mm,
What do you say to that? Is that true? Are these standardized tests culturally biased? And the majority of that is coming from the African American community,
mm-hmm,
that the tests are culturally biased against African American students. And that is one, not the sole reason,
mm-hmm.
but that is one of the reasons why some African American students do poorly with standardized tests. What do you say to that?
I do believe that we have had a history of creating tests, um, and instructional materials, textbooks, all of the above, that are culturally biased. Um, and that can hinder student performance. And I think that's why, a lot of districts are now looking into reading, and I can't remember the author off the top of my head, but like books about culturally responsive teaching and all of that. I will say for the standardized test, and I don't know if you've heard about the STAR redesign, but last year they created what we're calling STAR 2.0, STAR redesign, to kind of help with some of that bias. Now, I am not allowed to look at secure test materials, so I can't say that this year's questions were perfect. I can't say that there was absolutely no cultural bias, but I will say this. For example, one small sample, or example, say there is a writing prompt about what was the best vacation you ever went on, right? And let's say, and I'm not going to say African American, I'm going to just say economically disadvantaged student who has never left Port Arthur or Beaumont, or my vacation is going to Louisiana
I'm
to
shaking
go
my
see
head
my family.
fiercely for my
Right,
listeners. I'm
right.
shaking my head. Yes.
So how can I write a whole 5-paragraph essay on my favorite vacation when the farthest I've gone is Galveston, right? So, what they have done, I know they implemented this last year, is that now the writing, it reflects the reading. So, they've combined the writing and the reading test. So, what I'm doing now, and even they have some of it in science and social studies, they're writing as well. So now I'm going to read a passage about this science topic. Let's say it's the water cycle. And now I'm going to write about what I read in the passage. Or I'm gonna write about, and I'm not the curriculum supervisor, so I don't want to name a skill that's not in there. But whatever the passage is, so I'm gonna read about something, answer some questions about it, and then I'm gonna write about it, and I'm gonna use some of my experience. But I still get to have. So it's almost like what they're trying to do is they are listening, and we have told them a lot of our kids don't have that background experience on certain things that y'all are putting in these, in these writing prompts. So now what they're saying is, okay, before they answer this question, we're going to build their background knowledge on this topic. So we're going to structure these passages, give them that background knowledge, and then allow them to write about it. So we're going to word this in a way that there should be no room for a past experience to hinder, or lack of experiences to hinder them from answering this question. And so I think TA is listening, and they're trying to get to that, and that's one of those steps that they're taking to get to that. But I can't say that every standardized test question has made the mark. I admittedly have not just read through a start release test to see if anything was culturally biased, but I do know it is a true issue, and it's something that has been communicated, and certain things have been in place. I was just talking to someone about gifted and talented. Like I said, I'm newly assigned to gifted and talented, and even some of those test questions, or the way that they are worded or administered to students, are biased. Like, I have an African American son who's 13, and the teachers I referred my child to GT from kindergarten. My child is GT. Like, and I'm not saying that because I want him to be GT. My child is he's gifted and talented. However, he did not qualify until 4th grade. And I believe strongly that part of that is the testing that was used. And there are questions, like, for example, one of our consultants, we were talking, one question is about a mailbox, or they have to look at a mailbox or say something about a mailbox. Now, when was the last time you saw a real, like, what we know to be a mailbox?
Yes.
I live in a house and I don't have a mailbox. I go to the little mail section, and it's like a little thing, and you
Yeah.
turn the key and you get your mail. And again, I live in a house. So imagine our economically disadvantaged students who live in apartments. They probably have never seen what a mailbox, unless they just see it on TV.
Mm-hmm.
Or so those and we were talking about, getting a nonverbal test, and a different, we were just talking about, reevaluating what assessment tools we're using, and how they could be biased, and what were some alternatives because of things like that. And so those are the things that can kind of come about in other tests. Like, um, I think it was something like maybe a certain animal, like a cow or something. Well, if I've never been if I don't live in the
Right.
country, if I live in New York, or in, certain things, I don't know. I've never seen that. A subway, and I
Yeah.
live in Texas.
Yes.
How would I know? How can I answer a question about a subway? I don't even know what a subway is.
Yes.
So yes, those are real issues. I do think TEA is listening, and they're working towards trying to fix that. But I do agree that there are a lot of bias instruments, not just with STAR, but like I said, even with evaluation tools that can possibly be a hindrance to our African American students.
Okay, so like I said, that was going to be my last question about standardized testing.
Mhm.
So now we're going to move on. How can parents and students make learning more effective in the classroom? And then I'll follow, my next question will be similar to that. How can teachers make learning in the classroom more effective?
I would just say, with parents and students, just number one, supporting at home. So if when homework is assigned, please, if a teacher asks you to do something, please just do it. Please. Most teachers have a genuine heart. So please, if they're asking for assistance with something with their student, even just the basic needs, honestly, to help me in my classroom, make sure that your child doesn't come to school upset. Don't scream. Don't fuss this. Don't fuss in the morning. Let them wake up and have a peaceful day. If they didn't take the trash out, tell them at 4 o'clock when they come home. Let them have a peaceful day. On the day when just those little things. Make sure they're not hungry. Bring them to school on time. We'll feed them, but bring them to school on time. Because let's say you have bare minimum. Let's say you had a hard life and you were at a second grade education, so you can't help with homework. You can feed, right? Like you can get some food, or you can put them on the bus. Help us with those little things. It's what we call the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like,
Mhm.
help us meet those smaller things, and we'll take care of the rest. If you can't help with the academics, but just show up. If we give you a Class Dojo link, if you got to delete your Facebook app to make room for the Class Dojo app or the Remind app, do it.
Ooh, you
And
asking a lot.
you know what I mean? I'm just, if you got to delete an app off your phone so that you can communicate with your child's teacher, delete the app. If you have to show up to a parent, just show up, because the same energy you took to learn Facebook and Instagram, you can learn Remind. You can learn Class Dojo. You can do, I'm sure if you are, say you're a grandparent raising your baby and you are not tech savvy, I will bet you $100 if you walk up to your child's teacher when you pick them up and say, "Can you put this app on my phone?" They will do it for you. Someone on that campus will do it. So please, that is how you can really, like I said, help us with the homework if you can help. Be available. Attend those meetings. Motivate your child. Stay on them. Hold them accountable. That's how. And with the students, help us help you. Just help us help. Be willing. If you are willing and your mindset is willing to learn, we will do our best to meet you where you are. Um, as far as teachers, I would say number one, for effective, I think you said to make
Effective learning in the
effective
classroom.
learning, number one, you have to build those relationships with parents and students. You could be the smartest person in the world. You could be the bubbliest person in the world. But if you refuse to build a relationship with your students or and their parents, teaching basically is nothing. You're not going to have any success. So that would be first. Also, if you're doing all the talking in the classroom, that's not effective instruction. So I would say, to make learning effective, the students need to be doing majority of the talking. You do your mini lesson and you turn it over to the students to inquire, to engage, to explore. And that's how they become better learners, to where they start teaching their friends. They always say, to know if you understand, if you understand something, if you could teach it to someone else.
Mhm.
But if I'm just sitting and getting, most likely I'm not. I know I'll be, I'm spaced out. I'll be spaced out. So if I'm just sitting and getting, I'm really not getting. So just making sure that the students are doing all the learning. Like I mentioned earlier, culturally responsive teaching. You're gonna have to know your kids. You're gonna have to know their backgrounds. You're gonna know where they come from, and that is not to make an excuse. Oh, Johnny came from this, so he can't do it because he doesn't know. No, that
Exactly.
means Johnny came from this, so let me make it real for Johnny so he can understand. So, for
Yes.
example, one quick example: when I was a fourth grade math teacher, I taught profit, right? Because
Mhm.
people say we don't teach financial literacy, but it's in the text. We just don't cover it because there's not that many questions on the stars. Again, back to what I said earlier,
Yes.
but it's there. But I'm not going to uh, teach profit on something that the students don't know about. But guess what my students knew about? They knew about the cool cup lady.
Right.
They may call her something else. Everybody has their own, cultural label that they place on the cool cup lady. But in my day, it was the cool cup lady. And she would buy 10-cent packets of Kool-Aid, free water, because that was before we cared about if we had bottled water and filtered water. And she's making hundreds of cups for 10 cents 10 cents for a pack. That my kids got that. The candy lady, they understood, because I had to meet them where they were. I didn't say like, "Oh, they won't know about profit because they don't have money and they." No. Okay, I know how to get them. I know the cool cup lady. Right. So it's knowing your students and meeting them where they are is what's going to get them to learn, and then also meeting their different learning styles. So in my learning style and my teaching, I did a lot of music. My kids loved music. So we were Flocabulary, which is a website where it had like rap songs to help them learn their multiplication facts or any other skill, actually. So we would do that. For my kinesthetic people, we touched and we moved things, and we had gestures for different things. And for my visual, we had anchor charts. So you have to have all of that to meet those students and get it internalized, and so they can master those skills.
You know, I know that moving on to the admin side, I would assume that that's a step up, like out of the classroom. The promotion to the admin side is a great thing. But man, we miss you in the classroom. Wait, and you, obviously I'm not a student,
Right.
but we miss you in the classroom. Oh my goodness.
Thank you for that.
Wow. Wow. We miss, because there are not a lot of teachers that think the way you do and then implement that.
Right.
They
Yeah.
just teach and keep going. Whether you get it or
Yeah.
not, they don't care about Johnny's background, none of that. Yeah, we miss you in the classroom. Okay, so speaking of classroom, what do you think motivates students more? Is it good marks or bad marks? So, and by marks, I mean like A's and B's or D's and F's or great job, Johnny,
Mhm.
or this was very poor, Johnny.
Well, I would definitely say positive reinforcement is always going to be a better motivator. I mean, I've had some kids, and I don't want to get too much into it because two that come to mind, they are deceased now. So I don't want to get too into it, but like I've had students who were trouble, trouble for some teachers. And when I tell you the smallest, oh my gosh, you did so good walking down the hall. I mean, and these are like fourth and third graders. These are not kindergarten. They work for that. They eat that up. They want to learn for you when you reward them. I mean, sometimes kids can be so mature and required to do so much adult like things in their regular lives, or sometimes they say certain things and you're like, oh, he's grown. But when you realize they're really just kids and they want to earn toys too, and they want to please you too, like it really does make a difference. So I do feel like I had more impact of, you know, oh my goodness, my class walked down the hall quietly. No one had to say anything to them. You get beans in the jar. I think that did more than I was just in the hall and Miss So and so had to tell you to da 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 da. So we're gonna take. I think the positive definitely had more impact. Also, for example, I would have like little after the CBA, I would sit down with my kids. CBA is the common benchmark assessments, or some people say curriculum based assessments. It kind of depends on what district you're in, but it's basically an assessment that's given like at the end of a 6 weeks or a 9 weeks, right? So I would have like little meetings with my students and show them like their scores. Now, I could say, Johnny, you made a 60 and you need a 70 to pass. So you need to work on that, or you're going to have an F, or I could say that. But I think it was more powerful for me to sit down with Johnny and say, hey, this time you made a 60. Last 6 weeks, you made a 40. Look at that growth. You went up 20 points. Oh my goodness. Can we aim to just go up maybe 10? Let's not even try to do 20. Let's try to aim for a 70 this time. Johnny's going to be like, yeah, I got this. But if Johnny made a 40, then a 60, and I'm like, 40, you failed. You failed again. you know. So then let's say Johnny comes back 36 weeks. He didn't make a 70. He made a 65, right? Now, based on my alternate response, Johnny's still gonna feel like a failure because, oh man, I needed to make a 70 to pass. I got a 40, a 60, and a 65. But then if Johnny meets me, he went from a 60 to a 65,
That's what I'm thinking.
right? You went up 5 points, Johnny. Like, okay, I know we didn't make it to the 70 that we wanted, but look, you went up 5 points. So let's keep. So that positive always positive, always when, love, always love and light always, is going to be, darkness any day. So I definitely agree that that positive reinforcement, even with parents, um and that's like a good teacher's trick at the beginning of the year. If you know you have that difficult child coming, or this first day of school, he's going to be a little handful, start now with the parent. So you start making that contact first week of school. Hey, I miss so and so. Just checking in. Johnny did a great job this week. Or when you see Johnny doing something, oh, Johnny gave his friend his pencil, or Johnny picked up a pencil for his. I'm gonna tell your mom that. If you start early by praising that student for doing great things, then they're gonna want to keep doing good things. It's gonna distract them from that bad behavior that they've had in previous years. And when you do have to call Johnny's mama because Johnny was cutting up, Johnny's mama knows you're not gonna just call her, you're not picking on him because you've called her already for positive things. So it works with the parents, it works with the students, it motivates the students. So I'm all for that positive reinforcement.
I don't think, and I'm not categorizing all teachers and all educators, but I don't think teachers call parents for good stuff. They only call for bad stuff. They only call to, for lack of a better word, complain about the daughter or the son or whoever. They never call and say, Johnny was so good. He was a great leader today. He shared his pencil and he helped, Keisha.
Right. And
Nah, I don't know
it's
if they do
sad
that,
to
but it's a
say,
great idea.
right. It's sad to say, and I do know some good teachers that do it. And like I said, I did it. So like one of my, and I don't remember if it, and kudos to whoever taught me this when I was teaching. I don't remember who or where I heard it from, but it was always like, one goal is always to reach out to every parent first week of school by phone and just connect with them, so I would always do that. And then again, like with those difficult students, and let's say my first phone call had to be negative. Like maybe we didn't make it, right? And my first phone call had to be negative. I always noted and made in my mind, the next time this child does something right, I'm going to tell his mom, or I'm going to call his grandma, whoever is raising him, and let them know he did something positive, and basically keep that same energy.
Yes.
When they're being, if you're going to call them every time they're cutting up, let them know that it's not all the time, call them. And then because the parents will start off like with you, like, yeah, I know, okay, I'm gonna get on them. But once you're calling every single time, then the parents start getting irritated. so so you kind of have to, but I do know some teachers that do it. As a matter of fact, I had, in my son's seventh grader, I believe it was this year, because I want to say it was his Spanish teacher. And oh, I wish I could remember what he did. I don't remember what my son did. And his teacher called me, and my son's a talker. So I thought, oh Lord, not the teacher calling me, and he's in middle school and I'm an educator and she's calling me. And when she called, she said something like, I just want to let you know you have raised such a mannerable son. He helped, I don't know who he helped somebody do something. This is a middle school teacher, seventh grade, middle
Wow.
school teacher. He did this, and I just told him that I was going to call you to let you know that he blah, blah, blah. For me, I was just like, oh my God, and I'm a teacher and that's my son. But because all I'm used to hearing is, because so he's a good kid. So the only time somebody ever calls me is if he's talking or doesn't, and it's not often, but I'm thinking, oh, if the teacher's calling me, he must have been talking. So for me as an educator, the only calls I get is, yeah, he was kind of busy today. He was kind of talking. He's a little wiggly, Um, to hear just somebody say, "You've raised a mannerable son. He's so mannerable. He's so helpful. He's such a great kid." That meant something to me, So, I forgot what the question was. Oh, but yes,
Good and bad. Yeah.
there are teachers that make a point to do that.
Yes.
Is it all of them? Is
No.
it most of them?
I
No,
don't know.
it's not. And I will admit it is not. But I'm hoping that if we can start in, I know our district has like a mentor mentee program with first year teachers. If we can start by giving our teachers good mentors that, do those kind of practices, then after a while, the not so good practices will fade away, and then all of our teachers will eventually be that way. But I can admit not all are, but I do know some. It's not what do they call it? It's not like a unicorn. They exist. It's not a unicorn teacher. They exist.
I'll take your word for it. I will take your word for it, Jill. I will take your word for it. How has technology hurt and how has technology helped in the classroom?
Okay, so I'll start with the we're going to go back to standardized testing. We're going to go back to homework, what I said about that. If implemented with the intent, like the original intent, it is wonderful. We have things like box lights where they can touch on them, and they can even like flatten them, and the students can do interactive lessons. Um, even the remote learning that we all were introduced to, unfortunately, but with COVID, now we have options for students who are homebound, or um,
Right.
even one thing that I've seen implemented in our district. Let's say we have a teacher, maybe we have a permanent sub, and she hasn't been trained as a certified teacher would. I've seen where the certified strong teacher is zoomed in or Google Meets in to the classroom, and they are teaching the students that are in the classroom, and the sub is facilitating, kind of like just kind of helping and monitoring. And so I think technology helps in that way. And again, like I said, the interactive technology tools, uh, even just there are certain programs that build pathways for students. So, like, say, like I'm thinking iStation, Imagine Math, those types of programs where it first tests you to see what level you're on, and then it'll build you an educational pathway to kind of teach you and guide you, almost like um, a AI tutorial in a way, to guide you through and kind of remediate. So, in those ways, wonderful, right? The way that it can be hurtful, though. Oh, we finished the lesson today. Go get on your Chromebook. Go get on Imagine Math. And then I have stopped teaching or enriching or reinforcing. And I'm just saying, oh, you done? Okay, go get on this. Oh, go take an AR test then. Just go do, or you can get on YouTube for the rest of the day, or um, those things. I would say, if it's so, technology is the blessing and the curse. So if implemented the correct way, if the resources that the district is providing are actually used, and they're used with fidelity, and they're used you know, in the way that it was intended, technology is amazing. And like I said, even just with the team teaching, and there's so many things. We were just in a leadership meeting, and they were showing us the like a robot, like we had like a little dog robot, like just so much. The students are learning how to code robots, and so it's amazing. But if we don't open, if we as teachers and educators and even parents don't use it in the way that it was intended, it can just be another thing and hurtful. And if we don't monitor it, they'll have exposure to things they shouldn't have exposure to. So, as the adults, we just have to do our due diligence to make sure that we use the good side of technology, and that we don't use it as busy work like we used to do worksheets. Technology shouldn't replace worksheets.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Imagine Math shouldn't just replace worksheets. So instead of just giving them a worksheet, oh, get on Imagine Math. Well, that's the same. It's pretty much the same thing. But if we're like, they're using it to build their knowledge, I think it can be amazing. So,
Okay, Jill, I want to be respectful of your time. We are right at the 60-minute mark. We're like
okay.
a minute from it. So, do you still have time to stay, or do I need to go ahead and wrap up?
No, I'm fine. I'm fine. Cause I'm a talker. When I get
Yay! I'm glad you
education,
said you were fine. I was hoping you would.
education is one of those things. Like, I'll just keep going, 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 going. So
Good.
stop me if I get off on tangents. But no, I'm fine if you need
Excellent.
a couple of extra minutes.
Okay, so we'll go over the 60-minute mark, but you've been so good. I'm so glad you said you had a few more minutes. Okay, so what can, and I love this question for myself because Teachers are always the one that are teaching, 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 and the
Mhm.
students are, supposed to be learning, learning, learning. But I want to flip the script here. What can teachers learn from their students?
So I'm gonna give like a surface answer, and then
Okay.
I'm gonna give like another answer. So like literally, for example, I said I was like a one-way dual language teacher. My students taught me Spanish. Like they
Oh, wow.
helped me. Now I had my little Spanish 1, 2, and 3 from high school, but they would teach me little word, certain things like that. So they actually can literally teach you, right? But they can also teach you. You can learn about their culture. So as I'm learning the Spanish, I'm also learning other things about their culture. I'm talking to them. They can teach you how to empathize. If you sit with them long enough, you'll understand where they come from. So so they can teach you that. They can teach you how to teach because they're going to show you what their learning styles are. So if you notice every time at recess, little Johnny is having or let's say Susie is having a whole concert, you know, okay, I need to incorporate music. If I want to say different names 'cause I'm tired of Johnny and Susie. If Jamal,
Yeah.
if
Come
Jamal
on,
is drawing,
Jamal.
right? Jamal is drawing all the time. Oh, I need to maybe I can have an activity where we incorporate art into our lesson. Um, I'm trying to think of certain things. Like my students love Disney Channel. Well, I love Disney Channel. So it teaches you how to connect with them. So then from that, I know when I'm giving examples, when I'm writing my word problems, I'm going to put Nia and Booker as the characters in my multi-step problem from That's So Raven. I mean, or Raven's Home, where I'm in the That's So Raven age, but it's
Yes.
now Raven's Home or for people who may be older, I'm going to put Mickey and Minnie, in or I'm going to draw from an episode when I'm teaching reading and perspective or whatever it is that I'm teaching. I'm trying to think of the not first person, third person, but like the character voice. You
Okay.
know, I can build on, oh, this happened in this episode. This relates to this topic because of, so they'll teach you how to teach in you getting to know them. Um, they'll teach you about your biases. You learn
Mm.
yourself as well. You learn your strengths, you learn your weaknesses. And one thing that my students taught me was grace.
Oh,
And
that's a big one.
I had to learn that kids are kids and everyone has bad days. And so I learned as a teacher, you know, I'm trying to do different names. So Juan can come in my class and give me the blues today. Juan might throw a chair. Juan might call me a name. But tomorrow when Juan comes to my door, Juan still gets a handshake, hug, or high five. Juan still gets a good morning because I have to show him grace. And there have been times, like I said, I've had a student throw a chair one day
No.
and the next day come to the door. I'm so sorry. At that time, I was Mrs. I'm so sorry, Miss Spencer. And I had to hug that child and forgive that child and move on with my day, right? Or because you have students that come in with all kinds of disabilities, oppositional defiant disorder, and sometimes it just may be a mood they're in and they don't mean it, they don't know. And then the next day, so just imagine if that student threw a chair, she didn't throw it at me, let me be clear, but threw a chair, called me a name, I don't know, you stupid teacher or something like that, made me upset, right? They've calmed down, they went home, they took their medicine, whatever it is, they forgot about it. And they come to school the next day. And I'm looking at them like, oh no, you called me this yesterday. So you know what? You're going to go sit over here for the rest of the day. Or I'm not going to talk to you today because you said this. Or you need to apologize to me. But then number one, I'm going to trigger their disability and I'm
Yes.
making it worse for myself. So that isn't helpful. So I've learned every day is a fresh start. I can't remember who told me that, But thank you to the person that told me that. I've learned grace. Every day is a fresh start. So you can, you know, be upset. I may have called your mama yesterday, whatever happens. But today, you get a smile, you get a handshake, or you get a hug, whichever one is your choice. And me doing that with kids helped me to do that with adults. As adults, there are times when
Listen,
someone you may know they've said something to you or about you, or they have looked at you, or they have gotten an attitude with you. And the next meeting or the next phone call, you have to say, "Good morning. How are you? I was just calling because I was wondering, da 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 da." Or you have to pass by them and say good morning, or you have to give them their props when they do something, even though they have done something to. So I think being a teacher, my students really taught me that grace, and that people are human, like humans are human. And those tiny humans really helped me see that we're all flawed and we all come with our baggage, and it's not intentional. It's not, I can't take anything personally. And learning that from my students, that I can't take anything personally, has helped me navigate my adulthood, because I have so much less stress, so little enemies, because I'm just gonna love everybody. And unless you come to me and just really say, I have a problem with you, and then we're friends, we're good. I'm gonna speak to you. I'm gonna smile to you. I'm gonna say, "How you
yes.
doing?" Even if you don't. I've had to have a situation where I would speak to someone, and it wasn't they didn't hear me. Like, they intentionally looked me in my face and didn't speak and kept walking. But I had to keep
Ah,
just saying, "Good morning. Good morning. I know it's not you. I know it's something you're going through right now. Good morning. How you doing?
yes.
Okay, good morning." And so I think being a teacher and dealing with those different types of students with different types of disabilities, different types of home, backgrounds, taught me that grace that I implemented into my everyday life. So,
You have been in education 14 years. What is your personal intention in the educational space?
that's a tricky question. Because I'm still trying to figure out my purpose. So I'll say,
Yes.
you didn't ask purpose, you asked intention. So I'm going to answer to intention.
Okay.
Um, just to make a difference. And I know that sounds cliche, but specifically to make a difference in the lives of those students who are overlooked and underestimated. And so, whether that be African American, whether that be economically disadvantaged, um, I want to make a difference. And so, one thing that I didn't share, which would be a whole nother hour, is that I came from homelessness. As a child, we lived in a hotel, or in the back of my mom's job. So my mom was a radio station manager, and on the nights that we could not afford a hotel, or no one would let us borrow money, or we weren't living with someone else at the time, we would go and sleep in one of those rooms on the floor with our garbage bags of clothes, and that's what we would do. And so, moving forward, long story short, I want to let those students know I feel you. Like, we stayed in projects too at some point. We weren't, you know, we didn't have it all together. But look at me now, and you can do it too. So if you have to see me walk in and smile, if we have to have that one-on-one conversation, um, I just want to be there for them, and number one, be an example. So if that's what my role is right now, since I'm not as often on campuses, then you just seeing someone that looks like you succeed, then I'm fine with that. Also, just anytime I come in contact with students, just being able to motivate them and encourage them and relate to them. Um, that's kind of my intention, to build successful students despite barriers.
Oh, girl, that sounds like a book. Oh, that's
So,
girl. You need to take that on the road. You need.
so yeah,
Wow. Okay, you are right. That's a whole nother podcast.
yeah,
Homelessness. In the back of
Mhm.
the that's a whole nother podcast.
It
You are
really is.
it is. It is. I might have to hit you up for my season 3.
Okay.
You're on my season 2 right now. I might have to hit you up for my season 3 on that one.
Okay.
But what does success look like in the classroom? And hopefully it goes beyond the letter grades.
Right. I would say success, I would measure success by the growth that students are making within the classroom. So it kind of goes back to what I was talking about when I did the example about my individual student meetings. It kind of goes back to what I talked about when I was talking about domain 2 with the accountability. Students may not meet the quote unquote standard, but if from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, when you were in my classroom, you grew, you showed some type of improvement, you are one step closer to where you need to be, I count that as success. And even if that's, maybe that is not always academic, which I'm hoping that it is, obviously, but even if it's behavioral. So, like I said, if you, like, I had one student, first day of school, I think it was second or third grader. He told me, I get upset, I throw chairs, I have fits, I do this. I just want to let you
At least
know.
he was honest.
Sometimes, yeah, sometimes I can't control my behavior, whatever, whatever. Not once in my classroom did he throw a fit, throw a chair, any of that. The only issue I ever had with him was playing around and wanting to talk. And he would get emotional and he would cry sometimes and he had anxiety. Did he ever call me out of my name? Did he ever storm out? Did he ever throw a chair? Did he ever throw a fit? No. So for me, going from throwing chairs to just playing with friends, that is success to me. Now, an administrator coming in, mine didn't. But for example, an administrator coming in might see him playing and talking and be like, "Oh, well, you need to manage him," or he shouldn't be doing that. But for me, it is growth to have a child getting in trouble for acting out to just being a social kid who needs a little redirection, right? So I would say behaviorally and academically, I would say that success in the classroom is growth. Also, an established and visible respect and relationship. So if I can leave my class and I know that my kids know I love them and they love me and they just want to, make me smile and I want to make them smile and I just want them to feel loved, and I know that at the end of the school year, I feel like I've been successful and I've done something. If I see them like, I'm at the age and the place in my career where now I'm going to the high school and
Uh-oh.
I'm seeing
Your
my second
babies.
graders and my third graders, and they still know who I am, and they still light up when they see me, and they're happy. Like, I just got a graduation invitation for one of my second graders, and I saw her at work the other day. She was like, "Hey," like, so excited. So though that is success to me. I know I've made an impact. So
Okay, so my follow-up question is, what did you do in your class that, and I don't even know the words to use for this, that did not set the tone or the environment for that student to throw the fits, to throw the chairs and all of that? What did you do that he felt like, I don't need to do this, I don't have to do this?
I don't know if I can pinpoint one thing, but I'll go back to what I said about the grace. So one thing that I'm going to say I frown upon is a teacher coming to me at the beginning of the school year, at the end of the school year, and say, "Oh, you're going to have you're going to have Johnny, and Johnny does this and Johnny does that and he is horrible and you just going to have to call his mama and you're going to have." I didn't accept that. Even if they came to me, I just blotted it out. So when that student came to me and told me that, I just told him like, "Oh, okay, that's okay, but we won't have those problems this year." And I just carried on as a regular. I didn't say, "Well, you need to know you're not," a lot of us are kind of old school and we want to just put the fear of God in them, you know. That was just not my approach. I just said, "Oh, really? Okay. Well, we're not going to have those problems this year." And so then when he had anxiety about certain things, I would just sit down and say like, "It's going to be okay. Well, I just try to figure out with him. Again, I always gave my students, I greet them at the door. So I think it just gave a culture of I don't have to do this because I know if I'm feeling something, I can just go tell her. Like I don't
Mm.
have to act out for it because I know she's listening to me. And again, this is just my assumption, but that's what I think it is. And again, I didn't treat him like the kid that I know has a disorder. I Every student, and somebody told me this too. I don't know who it is, but somebody, you know, I want to say it was my master teacher, almost like an instructional coach when I was in Bryan ISD. Her name is Karina McNeely, I think. Um, I think she's the one that told me that. But every student, they're a blank slate. At the beginning of the year, you are a blank slate. You get an opportunity to start over. And so that's just how I treated him. And I think when he knew that he had that opportunity to start over, it was almost like he could, make a different name for himself. He got that grace. He got another chance, a second chance to do better. And I think that may be it. Just not bringing in what he said or what other people said, and gave him an opportunity to just, you know, to show who he really was.
Sounds like you gave him a safe space.
Yeah, safe space. There you go. A safe space. Yeah.
Yeah, you absolutely did that. What would you say is the biggest problem in education?
I would continue kind of what I was saying earlier. I would say mindset.
Okay.
I'm gonna say mindset, and this is why I think mindset. Every issue that we have in education, when you go back to the root cause, it's always mindset. So standardized testing. Why are we so anxious? Why are we so nervous? Our mindset, because of how we look at standardized testing. The culturally responsive, lack of culturally responsive teaching, our mindset. We think these kids, have this going on, or because they're economically disadvantaged, they can't do this, they can't do that. So we're not teaching to where they are, mindset. Or we think we know their culture, but we haven't taken the time to learn about it. So we have a mindset from when we grew up. So even that, goes back to that students, the ones that don't want to do their work, or the ones that think I have a disorder. And I'm not minimizing that disorders exist.
Right,
One of my
right.
roles is disabilities. But what I'm saying is they internalize, I've been told all my life that I have this and I have to act this way because I have this. That's mindset, So acting out, or I can't pass, so I'm not going to do my work. That is in your mind.
Mhm.
So there are systems and things in place and things intended to be a certain way, and but if our mindset won't allow us to implement those things, then that's where the issue lies. So again, with the standardized testing, with the way that we teach, with the way that we look at students, the students' way that they perceive themselves, the parents' perception of the teacher, parents' perception of the school, parents' perception of their own kids, all of that starts with the mind. And so I think until there are shifts in the mindset in all of those stakeholders, that is where the issue is going to continue. So I don't know how or what the solution is for it, but I think we just have to change our way of thinking. And once we change our way of thinking, things can get better.
Okay. Do you think that the modern day teaching, so the teaching that's happening right now, even as we're doing this podcast, do you think the modern day teaching will be beneficial for our students in the future?
Back to the intention.
Okay.
If implemented with fidelity in the way that it is intended. So if my modern day teaching consists of me following the curriculum along with all the teaching strategies that I mentioned earlier, um, and then all the culturally responsive strategies that I mentioned earlier, if those things are implemented with fidelity, absolutely yes. If modern day teaching is how some people are teaching right now with the messed up mindset, no. No, it won't. So if you're talking about, like I said, if you're talking about following the curriculum, making sure we're culturally responsive, making sure we're meeting students where they are, oh, yes, definitely beneficial. But if we're talking about teaching to the test, um, really emphasizing test anxiety, skipping over certain things in the curriculum because it's tested more, it's tested less, kicking kids out of the classroom because we don't know how to deal with them, not giving second chances. If that is someone's modern day teaching, or giving an assignment and giving homework without any explanation, you didn't teach it, you don't know if they got it, but this is the homework. If that is our modern day teaching, it is not going to be beneficial. But if modern day teaching as it is written and intended, yes, because we've done the research, we've asked those stakeholders, we've asked those entities that will be dealing with our students post secondary. So yes, I think it can be beneficial.
Okay. Now, one of your many, many titles within education, Jill, is you work within the special education, correct?
Well, I don't work with special education, but I work with Section 504, which they're kind of similar, but just
Okay.
a little different. Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. Should I refer to it as special education or refer to it as Section
You could say
504?
Section 504.
Okay.
We collaborate, but I don't do special education. At one point, I was the dyslexia coordinator, and they were under Section 504. They've recently moved to special education, and so only some of those dyslexia students that will stay in 504 are kind of under me, but my department is Section 504.
Okay. So you've explained to us what Section 504 is. How do students benefit from being under Section 504?
Okay. So, and I don't mind speaking to SPED. I'm sure that our director won't mind. So Section 504, it kind of stemmed from the Rehabilitation Act, just making sure that people with disabilities aren't discriminated against, and they have certain protections, right? So in the education setting, what that looks like is, if I have a disability, I am allowed to have certain accommodations that will help me basically gain my education. So some of the accommodations might include, and even for testing, because again, I'm testing coordinator as well. So on my test, I may need oral accommodation. So I may have a disability where I don't need like any special intervention, but it would help me if the test would read the questions to me. So I can have text to speech on my STAR test because I'm covered under Section 504 if I have that learning disability that, reading would help. Another thing, frequent individual structured reminders to stay on task, right? So let's say I have ADHD and I'm covered under 504. On my test, I get really distracted. So I need a timer that says, like, okay, after 5 minutes, move to the next question. Or I need my teacher to give me like a blue sticky note to mean this, to mean take a break, or a green sticky note that means this, or say I have autism. There are certain accommodations, language supports, certain things that students are able to receive during their classroom instruction. Say it's small group instruction. Okay, I work better in a smaller group, or I work better in one on one. So I need an individual test administration. Depending on their disability, they are covered under Section 504. And it's not just like learning or behavioral disabilities. Sometimes it may be a student who's diabetic. Maybe they need a snack break in the middle, or, they need to leave to go take medication. Section 504 will cover students under all of that. The difference with special education is, on top of the accommodations that students may get, they may get actual modifications or specially designed instruction. So where a student under 504 may just need an accommodation, a student under special education, they may need content mastery, or a resource class, or a life skills class, or they may need modifications to the curriculum as opposed to just something to accommodate them. But all students, and I'm bringing it back to testing, that qualify either special education, Section 504, and even under like our English language learner students, they have access to a robust, selection of accommodations for their STAR tests, and again, under their 504 plan or what we call their IEP for SPED, they can get those whatever they need from that.
What would you say are some myths about Section 504 and myths about special education?
So one one myth is, back in the day when you said a student was special ed, that's what they call special ed. We say SPED. You're thinking, and I hope this does not offend anyone, but you automatically think they ride a different bus than everybody else. They're locked in a classroom, and you think they, aren't as intellectual. They aren't as intelligent as other students. And I tread lightly, but you get
Right,
where
right.
I'm coming. There's a stigma. That's not really special education. There's a huge umbrella under special education. And then even with 504, a lot of people think, well, I don't want them to be SPED, so I'm gonna just let them be 504. But what they don't realize is when you say, I don't want my child labeled as SPED because of the stigma I just explained, and you only give them that 504, now you're limiting them to accommodations when your child could have really gotten some specially designed instruction, a plan that is really individualized and geared towards their needs. Not saying 504 plans are not geared towards students' needs, they are, but we have less that we can offer as opposed to students who are covered under the special education umbrella. And kind of to that whole stigma, for example, we are limited to thinking that special education is life skills or resource. But students who receive just regular speech services, speech falls under special education. As I mentioned now, dyslexia, that falls under special education. And what people don't know is people think that dyslexia, like those students have, intellectually, like they're cognitively low. I've heard that, like, people think like, oh,
Wow. Okay.
they're too smart to have dyslexia. There are students who are what we call twice exceptional. You can be gifted and talented, GT, and have dyslexia.
Yes.
Students with dyslexia have average or high cognitive ability. For some reason, the way their brain processes, um, you know, sh- causes them to struggle with, blending words together and reading and oftentimes spelling. But if you read it to them, they got it like that. They have strong vocabulary. But for some reason, when they're trying to decode words and put them together, they struggle. But a lot of people just think, oh, they're special ed. It, it's a stigma that's placed on special education. And really, special education is what it is. It is special education. It is specially designed to cater to your child.
Oh, I love that.
So I think that is a huge misconception that I hope a lot of parents understand. And I hope that if there's any parent watching that has declined special education services because they felt like, I don't want this label placed on my child, please, please, please reconsider. Please ask them for a read. Go back to art, please.
Yes.
Because if the school is suggesting it, they have interventions they would like to provide to your child. And if you're declining those services, they're not going to be able to do that. So that is definitely one stigma. Another thing, Section 504, a lot of people don't know, that can carry on to college. And so sometimes people will say, oh, that's a label that's going to follow them to college. No, think of it this way. If you decline services, or say, you don't want it to follow them in college, or let's say it this way. I qualify for 504 and I've struggled with the reading, or I've struggled with whatever it is, or I have ADHD and I need breaks. And then I get to college and now I'm taking time tests. I'm going to struggle.
Oh,
Or
yeah.
I don't, so if you have that 504 plan, or you have proof saying I was 504 in high school or in school, now colleges have to honor that. So now your time test is no longer timed, or you get this specific accommodation. And I can't speak for the higher ed, so I don't want to say exactly what they would get, but they will honor your accommodation, or honor that you were 504, and work with you to come up with accommodations that will help you. So Some people think it's a label but it's actually beneficial for a student who struggles with something to be accommodated so that they can be successful, so they can get their degree. So, those are some misconceptions that I try to address.
Yes, yes. Okay, so I know I have kept you over our 60-minute mark. I have three more questions for you. I hate to put a number on it because something else might pop in my head, but three more questions for you. Then I'm going to let you go.
Yeah.
So, why do teachers give students an 89?
Oh, that's a good question. Okay. So I will say this. I'm gonna say the politically correct answer.
Okay.
Teachers don't give grades.
Okay. That
Uh,
is politically correct.
teachers are not supposed to give grades.
Mhm.
There's a grading policy. And so it kind of goes back to what I was saying about homework being graded. Like, that's not a thing. Like, homework should not be graded. Even like test corrections, like our district policy says, like there are some teachers in any district, right, that may say, okay, you failed this test, and if you turn in your test corrections, I'll give you a 70, or I'll give you a participation grade if you just show up, or if you do this you get 100, and if you don't you get a 0. That is against policy, and you're not supposed to do that. So again, it goes back to my common theme of, if done as intended, we wouldn't have those types of issues. So here's the thing. If I'm really not giving grades, grades are supposed to reflect a student's mastery of a skill. So the idea is, I am teaching you something. You've had ample opportunity to practice independently. I know that I've taught it and I believe you've mastered it. So now I'm going to give you independent work on it, and that is your grade. And then the grade on that independent work is going to show me where you are and if you have or have not mastered that skill. And then at the end of the 6 weeks or 9 weeks, that is your average to communicate to your parent, this is where you are in mastering the curriculum. If that is followed with fidelity and truth, it does kind of, suck to have an 89. But
Yes.
if that is your, and I'm not going to say that I am opposed to, if a student has an 89, right? And maybe they slipped on something, give them
Give
the
them the
opportunity. Give them an
A.
opportunity to get the A, right?
Give them the
Um,
A.
because my child, I come from a straight A child, so I
Yes.
have had those situations. But also, kind of going back to the test corrections, you really aren't supposed to do that. So let's say I noticed Johnny has 89, right? And I noticed what brought him to 89 is because he got a 75 on this quiz. And the quiz was like, say the quiz was, what would it be? 4 questions. So they were 25 points apiece. So the real reason why I brought him down is because he got a 70 something on this quiz. I know he could have done better. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Johnny the opportunity to retake the test. And like, I know I can only speak for our district. Our policy says we're not doing makeup grades, but they can retest or retake, prove that they have mastered the skill, and you can replace that grade. So instead of saying, oh, well, Johnny passed, so technically he can't do test corrections because my highest grade for test corrections is a 70. So you pass, so you're just going to get the grade. I can give Johnny the opportunity. I can now, if I think I've already reviewed the test, so he would get 100 because I gave him the answers already, then I'm going to create another test that covers those exact skills, give it to Johnny. If he gets his 4 questions right, I'm just going to replace the 75 with 100. Same thing for any test. Okay, I got a 85 on this test, but I really wanted to get 100. Can I retake the test? If you haven't reviewed the answers already to the test, give them the test again and let them prove. Or give them, generate another one. Let them take it. Now, I know with CBAs and stuff like that, it's a little tricky. You can't really do that. But like with class test assignments, just let them redo it. And I know for the Port Arthur Independent School District, that is in our policy, that you're not going to just replace it with a 70, but they get the grade that they made when they retook it. So if they retook it and they got 100, but at first they took it and they got a 50, you have to give them that 100. I
Okay.
can't promise that every teacher in every district follows that, but that is, I know that's our policy. Usually all the district policies kind of line up. Usually one district doesn't have a different policy than another. They're usually all the same, depending on if they're legal as well. So
Okay. Do teachers, and I hear parents say this a lot. Do teachers pick on students? That teacher just picking on my baby. That teacher just picking on
mm,
my child.
I
Are we getting another PC answer?
okay, I'm gonna give both, right?
Okay.
I think it depends on the situation, but okay. So from my perspective as a teacher, I was not picking on kids. If I called you, or if your child was just being that child, your child was really being that child. So if I called you, they really were. I was not picking on. I don't. Most teachers, we don't have time to pick on kids. Like, do we really want to have to send your child to the office every day? No. Okay, I'll say that for good teachers, right? There's always going to be bad apples. I would say it's more of a maturity and a lack of classroom management where or lack of grace. So for example, that the story I gave earlier about the student throwing the chair. So let's say I'm gonna pick on secondary, even though I was elementary. This student comes to class and he got an attitude, and because I'm the teacher and I'm the authority, I'm gonna get an attitude back. And then because the student has ODD, he's not gonna just accept that. He's gonna keep getting an attitude with you.
Right.
So then now you got to send him to the office. And then you've made up in your mind the next day he come in my class, he just going to get kicked out because I don't have time for it. So then every time he comes to your class, you doing this because it's a power struggle. And because I'm the adult, how dare I be humble to a child that's talking back to me? I
Mhm.
know this is against every old school person's I
Girl, they are clutching their pearls right
I
about now.
understand, but it's not helpful. So then or you think you're being unwavering. So you're thinking, oh no, I'm gonna call your mom. Oh, you cutting up again? I'll call your mama every single day until she do something about it. So like I was saying earlier, mama is gonna start thinking you just picking on him at this point because why are you going back and forth with him every day? Why are you're the adult and you're going back and forth. You're trying to establish your dominance, but really you're making it work. So they think, I don't think it's the teacher's intent to pick on them. I think they're trying to like maintain their dominance or maintain that I'm the adult and they have to obey.
Mhm.
My approach was a little different. It was clear that I'm the adult and my expectations are firm. If you lose a dojo point, you lose a dojo point. If I have to call your mom, you made it to red. You made it to red. I got to call your mom. I did that. But I never had to get into a back and forth or I never had to have that to my recollection. I don't remember having to get on that level where it's like I'm picking at, so I think it's more of a they don't know how to properly approach the students because they feel like it's a respect thing.
Mhm.
But they don't understand that when they're doing that, it's a respect thing. They're actually losing respect and it's being counterproductive. And then
Absolutely.
once you lose the parent, like once the parent gets to where they feel like you're picking, then you've lost the whole thing. Because once the student knows their parent is on their side, oh, you've lost all power. You lost it
Yes.
all. So, are there bad apples that I think do kind of pick or they know the kid is gonna cut up, so they kind of test them? I do think that happens sometimes. I do think you know, we have bad apples in the education field, but I think more so it's just mindset.
Mhm.
I'm the adult. I'm not your little friend. I don't have to explain myself. You listen to me. And then our generation, we got to meet them where they are. They're not like us. They're not going to be like, my teacher just yelled at me. Let me sit down and be quiet.
Oh, those days are gone and never coming back.
Right. They are going to stand up. They are vocal. And we have to find a way to let them know you can express how you feel, but you are going to do it respectfully because I'm not going to disrespect you. And you just kind of have to meet them there. But I think it's hard when you are raised that I don't explain myself to you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go back and forth with a child. It's hard. And I think those are the teachers that get labeled as they're picking on them when really they have true intentions. They want to teach. They really do. They want to teach and they want what's best for their other kids too. Um, but yeah. And then sometimes it's like when a student acts up so much, sometimes they just get fed up. So they're like, just get them out of my class for the day so I can teach.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost like, let me just go ahead and get this out the way, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not always the best approach. So most cases when parents are saying the child is getting picked on is really something else. But in the cases where I think it could be perceived that way and the teacher seems as though it's the issue, what I was just saying is most likely the issue. So it's kind of a power struggle.
Okay. My final question for you,
Okay.
Ms. Jael Moody in the Education Department in Port Arthur, Texas ISD. Who do you think would make a great guest for the podcast? But you have to help me get them on.
Oh, no problem. So I think that Marcus Castile would be a good person to interview. He is what we call the money man. So he knows his stuff about all the alphabet you could think of, IRA, all, everything, all of that you could think of, insurance. He knows it all. So he's a very knowledgeable person, and I think that he would definitely make a pretty good guest on your show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being on my podcast. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Girl, okay, listen, I'm not planning your life and I don't have a plan for you like Jeremiah 29 says. But I am going to say we miss you in the
Oh,
classroom. We absolutely miss you in the classroom. And I will say, number two, that you need to do like a teacher's conference
okay.
and teach and mentor probably the teachers coming out. They might be a little more receptive to what you are saying.
Right, right.
And just create like a jail teachers tree. We always talk about that with sports. I'm a big sports head. But they talk about like a coach's tree, these amazing coaches that come from this one amazing coach like Greg Popovich of the San Antonio
Mhm.
Spurs. He has an amazing tree of other coaches that came from him. You could have an amazing tree of other teachers that come from you, because and I didn't pay you to be on here. You didn't pay me to be on here. I'm just stating facts of what I believe my facts are. You're an amazing educator, an
Oh,
amazing
thank
teacher.
you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
I really do. I'll have to think
Yes.
about that. I'll give you your props if it happens.
And however I can help, listen, you let me know however I can help. But thank you so much for being on my podcast. You are amazing.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And thank you to my listeners and my viewers for tuning in, listening, and learning. You can get Jael's podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.